These guys were the first real rock band I ever got into, and I still adore their music. Welcome to the show where I talk about the musicians, the artists, the environment, the entertainment people that helped shape who I am as a music fan. Welcome to Influencers. I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. I've been saving this one for a while because I knew it was going to be difficult to do. And I don't mean difficult in the fact that difficult about the band. I love the band for the most part, but because there's so much stuff and it's in such a weird array of order, I had to come up with a way to do it and not sound nonsensical. And I think I finally did it. So, without further ado, this is one of my big three. I have a triumvirate of acts that I consider my big three: Hanson, Carpenters, and Def Leppard. I've done the Carpenters already, I've done Hanson already, but I haven't done Def Leppard, and it was going to be very hard to do. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is going to be a long show because there's so much out there, but there's also going to be a few commentaries along the way. Because when the boys got into the 2000s, I kind of went nuts with the stuff that they had out. The original stuff has been great, but there's been, so basically what we're going to do is I'm going to do the commercial releases only. I'm not going to talk about the deluxe sets because, number one, until I became a part of the vinyl community, I didn't even know they existed, because I was out of everything but digital for 20 years. I have only recently discovered that a lot of them have come out on deluxe editions, and eventually I'll probably pick them up. I love them, and I want that extra material. I'm not a completist with this band. I'm close to it, but I'm not a completist. So commercial releases only. We're not going to talk about the deluxe sets. I will touch on some of the crazy amount of B-sides they've done without including them on any album. I will talk a little bit about some of the more recent stuff at the end, and I will talk about things that bug me and things that I love. We'll give a pretty good overview of all the songs and how I personally think there have been too many hits and too many live albums, hits albums and live albums in the 2000s. We'll go into that as we go on. I first heard Def Leppard on Creme FM. I can't remember the frequency, in Spokane, Washington, when their debut album came out, On Through the Night. Oh, everything is on Magic Box. I only have 2 or 3 on vinyl, the rest are on CD. I can't get to them, all of them. I'll pull a few of the later ones later, but everything else is going to be on Magic Box. On Through the Night was their first album. It was released in March 1980. And our radio station, Creme FM, started playing a song called Hello America. I really liked that song. And eventually I would get the album. I didn't get the album till probably 5 years later. I did, have recordings of the songs I liked from the radio. But I became a big fan of theirs overnight. I heard 5 or 6 of the songs that Creme FM used to play all the time. They used to play Hello America, Rock Brigade, Satellite, Wasted, couple of other ones here and there. But I loved their music from the very beginning. Now, they did have put out an EP in England called the Def Leppard EP in 1979. That sucker is hard to get a hold of an original. It was released as part of one of the box sets, which I haven't got either except for one. And this music was new to me. I was unaware of that EP at the time. You have to understand, when the album came out in March 1980, I was just moving into where I would become for the next few years. Because most of the 70s, from 75 to 79 or 80, early 1980, I was primarily into my pop stuff. Disco, I was a huge disco fan. Teen Idols, Carpenters, ABBA, and, stuff like that, Barry Manilow, and instrumental stuff, and Neil Sedaka, and stuff like that. It was with the education of my friend Kenna K. Elledge that I became aware of the Police in 1978. And that started leading me, she turned me on to Kirkham FM, and I started discovering a whole new, realm of music acts. In addition to the Police, they were playing first early Dire Straits, which I loved, and a number of other bands. And Def Leppard came along in 1980. Now, at the time, I had started gravitating toward New Wave. Thanks again to Crim FM and also to the Buggles for Video Killed the Radio Star. But I also found, the Cars were around, although I didn't really get into them until later. B-52s, who I loved from Rock Lobster on. Although I don't have any of their albums, strangely enough. I just have singles by them. Def Leppard was the first heavy metal act I really got into. Now, I knew Kiss, I knew Nazareth, I knew, the Eagles, Southern Rock, and Lynyrd Skynyrd, Southern Rock. But I wasn't into heavy metal in any way. And Def Leppard changed that. I started listening to more metal. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I was into hair bands, and I loved them as well as my pop stuff. I mean, if you look at my chart playlist in the 1980s, you'll find Def Leppard, Kiss, and, Rat, and all those people alongside Al Corley, Menudo, reissues by the Partridge Family. My tastes are always weird. On Through the Night, the debut album, featured the original recording lineup of the band: Joe Elliot, Rick Allen, Pete Willis, Steve Clark, and Rick Savage. Now, of course, the band would change members over the years, and Rick Allen did not appear on the Def Leppard EP. They had a different drummer for that, and he wasn't hired till after it was done. So, and he was the youngest member at the time. So all the songs on the album are really good. If you like them, you'll like the songs on the album. Granted, they would grow considerably as artists over the next few years. On Through the Night includes Rock Brigade, Hello America, Sorrow is a Woman, It Could Be You, Satellite, When the Walls Came Tumbling Down, Wasted, Rocks Off, It Don't Matter, Answer to the Master, and Overture. And yes, I have notes up where I can see them. I can't remember them without it. Hello America remains one of my favorite songs by them. I always loved it. They didn't take off in a big way until 1981. And actually, it was more one song that took off rather than the whole album. High and Dry, the second album, the first produced by Mutt Lange, I believe, came out in July of 1981. They had several hit singles, or several rock hit singles with it. But it was Bringing on the Heartbreak and its incessant run on a new channel called MTV that really started the ball rolling for them. The album included Let It Go, another hit and run, High and Dry, Saturday Night, Bringing on the Heartbreak, Switch to 625, which is a Steve Clark masterpiece, You Got Me Running, Lady Strange, On Through the Night, Mirror, Mirror, Look Into My Eyes, and No, No, No. And they did do the remix of Bringing on the Heartbreak and Me and My Wine on later editions of the album. Just want to bring that up because both of those are pretty well-known songs. Bringing on the Heartbreak did so well that they did a new video for it. They remixed it and put it on MTV to help pad the time between the second and the third album. Now, at this point in time, the band was having trouble with Pete Willis, and he was fired between the recordings of albums 2 and 3. In his place came Phil Collen. Phil has been with the band ever since, and he has been one of their strongest writers, too. You can see the direction they were headed, and it would be very interesting. I'm going to get a drink. My mouth is very dry right now because I'm going to be rolling off this stuff. High and Dry is a great album. But in all honesty, I like On Through the Night better, slightly. The songs are good, and I adore Bringing on the Heartbreak and Switch to 625, which is a Steve Clark instrumental that is just phenomenally good and is well known to the Def Leppard fans and has been used on countless things over the years. The rest of the album is great, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. There's something about the rawness of On Through the Night and the slightly more slick sound with High and Dry that rubbed me the wrong way at the time. That would change later. When they started recording the third album, Phil Collen was now part of the band, and Mutt Lange had settled in as their Svengali, according to some people, although I don't think Mutt was that bad. Mutt did some great stuff with them. And in January of 1983, Pyromania was released. It would become a monster hit, thanks to stellar videos for Photograph, Rock of Ages, and Foolin', which got heavy airplay on MTV. They were all three hit singles as well on pop radio. Pyromania includes songs that they still do in concert today. I mean, they still do a couple of songs from the other two albums, but Pyromania was the album that really solidified their popularity. And as a result, you still see quite a few of those songs on their tour and on their live stuff. The full lineup: Rock Till You Drop, Photograph, Stage Fright, Too Late for Love, Die Hard the Hunter, Foolin', Rock of Ages, Coming Under Fire, Action Not Words, and Billy's Got a Gun. This album is top-notch from beginning to end. Mutt Lange's production doesn't quite get so slick as it did in a few places on High and Dry. It keeps a slightly more raw edge, and I think that's what kicked them off in a big way. The videos, Def Leppard has always been a video band. They have done videos for practically every single they've done, and they've done a great job. They were one of the top video acts of the decade on MTV because they did great videos. Some of them were creative and acted out, like Photograph and Foolin', Rock of Ages from this album. Later, there would be great concert videos that would come from the next album or two, and just some terrific stuff. Pyromania is a legend for a reason. It is a diamond sales level album. It has always been a classic early 80s rock album, and it always will be. The great writing, the great production work, everything clicks here. It was after the release of Pyromania on December, I think it was New Year's Eve, I'm not sure of the date, 1983, that Rick Allen was in a car accident and lost his left arm. Everybody wondered if they'd be able to go forward from there. Rick has talked a lot about his issues when he first had the accident, who I believe they never did find the hit-and-run driver that caused the accident. He got messed up pretty bad. He was already messed up pretty bad at that point. All the band members were imbibing too much. And, of course, in the middle of the tour, they got in trouble for Joe saying some kind of a slur that pissed off a lot of Hispanics when they were in Texas on tour. I don't think he knew any better because that kind of stuff was still normal in Britain and they weren't used to America, and it shouldn't have been, but it was. There was a lot of concern whether Rick would be able to go forward, but eventually he did adapt to playing with his feet and an electronic drum kit, and that all came together as they recorded their fourth album, which would be over 3 years in the making, unlike the other three. Hysteria finally emerged in August of 1987 when people were wondering, whatever happened to Def Leppard? It went to #1 on the album chart. It produced a #1 single in Love Bites and a whole bunch of other huge hits, including Women, Rocket, Animal, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon It, and the title track. 7 hit singles from the album. It was insane. And the album, while close to their pinnacle, for me, it's slightly under. I do love it, and don't get me wrong, it is probably my second favorite of all their albums. But all of the songs on this album have something special for everyone. In addition to the 7 singles I mentioned, there were Gods of War, Don't Shoot Shotgun, Run Riot, Excitable, and Love and Affection. And there were several B-sides also to come out of the on the singles. There were a ton of other stuff out there by this point. Hysteria was one of the first CDs I ever bought. And it was stupendous from beginning to end. I loved everything about it, and I knew it was going to be a success, even though the first single, which was Women, kind of tanked at first. I love Phil Collins' opening riff on that song, and it's very subtle, and then it just boom into the music. There's a lot of great stuff on this album, even the singles and the album tracks, and it's going to be a classic forever. I'm not going to say my favorite songs off the album, or because I want to say that for Rank This, but there's going to be a lot of songs from this album on that list. Next was an even longer period. After the release of Hysteria, they were on tour for 2 years almost. And in 1990 or 91, I forget when exactly it happened, Steve Clark passed away of basically an alcohol overdose. He was 32. I was positive they would not bounce back from that. I really was. I was like, damn it, first Rick and then Steve, this is not going to be possible. They are not going to be able to regroup. We're going to be seeing a Joe Elliot solo album before long. The band didn't see it that way. They were determined to go forward after spending several years trying to help Steve clean up. They mourned and took time off, and then to get over the grief, they went back into the studio as a 4-piece for the first time. The album that emerged is my favorite Def Leppard album of all time, 1992's Adrenalize. Adrenalize is solid gold from beginning to end. Now, while it didn't do as well on the chart, singles-wise, as Hysteria and Pyromania did, Adrenalize just has winners from top to bottom. Again, the 3rd album in a row, pretty much, of that. Let's Get Rocked, Heaven Is, Make Love Like a Man, Tonight, White Lightning, Stand Up, Kick Love into Motion, Personal Property, Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad, I Want to Touch You, and Tear It Down. Again, 7 singles were released from this album. Starting off with a groundbreaking video for Let's Get Rocked, which was completely computer animated. It was one of the first ever all computer animated videos made. This album is just gold. Platinum. Super stupendous. It's never sold as well as the first 3 albums. The first 2 of the 3 of the big 3. It's never sold as well as the first 2 of the big 3, Pyromania and Hysteria. But it deserves to. I mean, there isn't a bad song on this album. I love White Lightning, which is their tribute to Steve. I love so many songs on this album. And it is just going to be so difficult to leave some of them off when I do my countdown on Rank This. But it is a fantastic album from beginning to end. And it took, like I said, it didn't come out till March of 1992. So they went almost 5 years between albums. They didn't do that again with the next album, which was actually released while they were on tour, because it was an album collection, more or less. In fact, the next two albums would be. By the time Retroactive came out in October of 1993, Vivian Campbell had stepped into the band after Whitesnake's demise to fill in for Steve Clark, and that lineup has been in place ever since. Retroactive is a collection. There are a couple of newer songs, and there are B-sides and rarities on the album. Now, it doesn't include the earlier B-sides that were really popular, like Me and My Wine. It does include most of the B-sides from the last two albums, Hysteria and Adrenalize, and a couple of original songs, like I said, and two or three songs that had never been released that were still in the vault that they had to finish. Retroactive came out in October 1993, just about 18 months after Adrenalize, and featured Desert Song, Fractured Love, Action, Two Steps Behind, She's So Tough, Miss You in a Heartbeat, Only After Dark, Ride Into the Sun, From the Inside, Ring of Fire, I Want to Be Your Hero, and then electric versions of Miss You in a Heartbeat and Two Steps Behind, and a hidden track at the very end of a piano-only Miss You in a Heartbeat. Again, this album is filled with some of my favorite music. From the Inside, which is a duet with Hot House Flowers, was billed on the single, I think it was the flip side of Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad, as the acoustic hippies from hell. Oh yeah, I want to go back and talk about that in a minute. This included their first ever movie soundtrack song, Two Steps Behind, which was originally released from the soundtrack of Last Action Hero, and was their last big top 40 hit at this point. It is an album filled with different sounds. You've got the ballads like Miss You in a Heartbeat, Two Steps Behind. From the Inside, you got some really good metal here from Desert Song and Only After Dark. There's some great stuff here all the way around. It's often considered a comp album, which it really isn't. It's a rarities album and an unreleased album, and it deserves more attention than it gets. Because of the darker theme of the music, they didn't use the super colorful Def Leppard logo. They only used it with just black and white, which I thought was interesting. The next album was the greatest hits album called Vault. Vault is no longer available. Released in 1995, October, it featured most of their hits from the last 5 or 6 albums. A brand new song called When Love and Hate Collide, which became their biggest hit in Britain overall. It barely dented the chart in America for some reason, even though it's again, one of my favorite songs. And also inexplicably substituted the video edits for some of the songs. They did the video edit of Pour Some Sugar on Me, which came off of their video collection Hysteria, and was also the one everybody was used to seeing on MTV, on this album rather than the album version. And they also included the video edit of Rocket, which I wasn't real happy with that. Vault contains Pour Some Sugar on Me, Photograph, Love Bites, Let's Get Rocked, the acoustic version of Two Steps Behind, Animal, Heaven Is, Foolin', Rocket, When Love and Hate Collide, Armageddon It, Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad, Rock of Ages, Hysteria, Miss You in a Heartbeat, the acoustic version, Bring It On the Heartbreak, and Switch 625. It's a great collection, and they would end up doing more of these later on, which kind of pissed me off, and I'll explain why when we get there. To me, this is the definitive collection of Def Leppard hits up to that point, 1995, so 15 years. That's pretty good. Now, the next album was the first full album to feature Vivian Campbell. And it's also, although in the 30 years almost since it came out, oh my God, I can't believe it's been almost 30 years since this album came out. Jesus, make me feel ancient. 1996's slang is often derided as one of their worst albums. And I cannot agree. I mean, Slang is different. It is way different than earlier stuff. They go more for a pop and almost AC feel in some of these songs, but there's also some good driving rockers on this thing. Slang is the only album they've ever released that does not include the Def Leppard logo somewhere. I think it might be on the inside cover, but it is not on. It's like the Carpenters Passage. The Carpenters logo appears little tiny in the back cover. The Def Leppard logo does not appear on the front cover of the album, and this album was so derided by critics when it came out. Now, there's been some reassessment of it of recent days, particularly because of the deluxe version. But I have always thought Slang was an underrated album. There were 4 singles from it: Slang, All I Want Is Everything, Work It Out, and Breathe a Sigh. There's also Truth, Turn to Dust, Deliver Me, Gift of Flesh, Blood Runs Cold, Where Does Love Go When It Dies, and Pearl of Euphoria, and some other countries have additional tracks. I'm only doing the US versions. I don't have any of the imports. So I really felt like the band got the shaft with this album. I have a CD single of the 4 tracks from Slang from UK that has other songs on it too. The single Slang. Slang is a different type of song, and people were not expecting to hear them do. Oh, geez. It actually has a very. Joe's vocals are distinctly Def Leppard, but the vibe is Third Eye Blind on that song. And this was actually probably about a year before Third Eye Blind broke, but it was the same kind of vibe. And I really think it got the shaft. A couple of these songs are going to be on that list on Rank This week too, because I think people deserve the chance to go back and listen to it. And again, I've listened to some of the deluxe versions online where I can get them. Some of them are not available because of the BS that went on between the band and Polygram/Universal later. So what I've been able to listen to online, I've listened to online. And it's been a great treat going back through some of these as I prepared for this. And Slang still holds up nearly 26 years later, right? And deserves better credit than it got. Now, they were not having big hits by this point. All I Want Is Everything hit on the rock chart here in America. I don't know. I don't think it hit the Hot 100. I'd have to look in my book to make sure. But they really haven't done that well on the Hot 100 since the late 80s. It's a shame because they do continue to do great stuff. 1999, when I was at discjockey.com, Euphoria came out. Euphoria is from June 1999, and their first single, Promises, hit #1 on the disc jockey request list. So obviously, it was doing well. It did well on the rock chart. I think it hit #10 on the mainstream rock chart. And it did hit the lower reaches of the Hot 100. Euphoria was a pretty critically liked album. It wasn't acclaimed, but it wasn't as derided as Slang was. And they were going more for a pop feel here, pop metal feel, rather than a straight heavy metal feel. Demolition Man, Promises, Back in Your Face, Goodbye, All Night, Paper Sun, It's Your Only Love, 21st Century Sha-La-La Girl, I always have hated that title, To Be Alive, Disintegrate, which is the instrumental on the album, Guilty, Day by Day, and Kings of Oblivion. There are some weaker points on this album, but the album overall is pretty good. And it does not hold up as well as some of the other ones, in my opinion. There are 3 or 4 songs that would have been better B-sides than having them actually on the album. But I enjoy the whole album, don't get me wrong. It's just that I feel that 2 or 3 of the songs are weaker than the others. And that's what probably might have turned off some of their fans over the years. I honestly don't know, because it doesn't seem to have a very good reputation among Lep heads. And considering Promises and Goodbye and Demolition Man are on this album, I'm surprised it doesn't have a better reputation. They would then move into the 21st century with X. X was released in July of 2002. And again, they had two big hits on rock radio with Now and Long Long Way to Go, both ballads, very uncharacteristic for them. In fact, there's more ballads on this album than any other album they've ever done, and it was great. X was a bounce back up a little bit from my opinion from Euphoria, even though I love Euphoria. Now, Unbelievable, You're So Beautiful, Every Day, Long Long Way to Go, Four Letter Word, Turn to Shred, Love Don't Lie, Gravity, Cry, Girl Like You, Let Me Be the One, and Scar. All great songs, all the way across the board. Again, you're getting older. They're getting older. At this point, they're into their late 30s, early 40s, and are changing the styles a little bit, going more for a pop sound, trying to have a little bit more influence on the pop chart. The thing is, they are also still 100% the same band that they always were for their fans. They have never changed their style live, and they have never changed up any of the other stuff that they've done on tour either. Really good stuff, and there's quite a few things in here that deserve to be part of their live shows even now, and I hope they continue to do it. Next up came Rock of Ages, the definitive collection. Again, this one was okay, because it's the first album to include new music from the previous three albums that were before Vault, and after Vault, sorry. And it includes a few things that weren't included on Vault because it is a 2-record set. The only thing that was different on this album, really, I think, did this have... This had... I'm forgetting which one was the original on this album. I think it was No Matter What. Yeah, No Matter What had not been released at the time that this album came out. And it includes all... I'm not going to run this one down, it'd take too long. But it's all their hits, a few album tracks, and No Matter What. No Matter What was new at the time, and there are other versions of it in other countries that substitute other tracks for some of the American ones. So your mileage may vary on this one. It all depends on what was a hit in that country. It also includes a different edit of Billy's Got a Gun, where they took the coda off of the song to fit it onto the CD. Now, one of the albums that I love that I feel was really underrated, again, is the next album, 2006's Yeah. Yeah is Def Leppard's first and only, so far, all covers album. And the covers they deliver here are fantastic. Mark Bolan's 20th Century Boy, David Essex's Rock On, which was the single, Jack Lee and the Nerves Hanging on the Telephone, the Kinks' Waterloo Sunset, Sweet's Hellraiser, ELO's 10538 Overture, Roxy Music's Street Life, David Bowie's Drive-In Saturday, Freeze, A Little Bit of Love, Mott the Hoople's The Golden Age of Rock and Roll, Badfinger's No Matter What, which was also a single off the Greatest Hits album. John Congo says He's Gonna Step on You Again, Thin Lizzy's Don't Believe a Word, and Faces Stay With Me. People who do not like this album are not really listening to it, because it's not supposed to be, exact covers of things. I was never a fan of the David Essex version of Rock On. I was 10, I think, when it came out. Never got into that song that much. I did like Michael Damian's remake in 1989. Def Leppard's blows them both out of the water. I just like the way they do it, and it's fantastic. I also am quite fond of their version of 20th Century Boy, and I'm quite fond of No Matter What, and I'm fond of their version of Stay With Me. The whole album is their take on this. It's not them trying to copy other artists. Some covers albums do that. This one, no. This one is straight up Def Leppard versions of these songs, and they are all fantastic. If you haven't listened to Yeah, or have not listened to it in a while, listen to it now and see if you agree. It is highly underrated for what it is. Drink time again. The next studio album has the most god-awful title, but it is also, again, a great album that American radio ignored for the most part. Songs from the Sparkle Lounge came out in April of 2008. I'm sorry, guys. I really hate that title. Go, Nine Lives, Come On, Come On, Love, Tomorrow, Cruise Control, Hallucinate, Only the Good Die Young, Bad Actress, Come Undone, and Gotta Let It Go. Great collection of original stuff here. Love their sort of duet with Tim McGraw. Nine Lives featuring Tim McGraw. He has one line or two, but that song is awesome. Only the Good Die Young, also fantastic. Everything on this album meshes well with what came before it and after it, and or the beginning and ending tracks. Again, this is another one of those albums that had like 6 other songs on versions. This one was the one that pissed me off because they released different versions with Target, iTunes, Walmart, with different stuff on it. And I mean, I think there are 6 different versions out there. I'm sorry, F that. I don't have the patience. I've only done that a couple of times when I've had to, for Hanson and the Ready set, because they were only certain songs available. The rest of them, I'm just not going to bother with it. This is when I started to get a little pissed off at them. Although the album is fabulous. Now, I'm not a live album person. We talked about this on Finding Your Music Mojo last week. If you haven't watched that with Dawn and I, go watch it. Mirrorball Live and More came out in June of 2011. It was done on their tour for Songs for the Sparkle Lounge. And it was, it has some great stuff on it. But again, live. Live albums just don't work for me sometimes. And, you know, I like this. This is better. I have some live albums I'm not fond of. I'm not fond of Caught in the Act by Styx. Not fond of Live at the Palladium by Carpenters. Although it's not a bad album. It's just that they didn't do enough of their hits. This, at least, they covered almost all the hits, and it is really very good, and the performances are top-notch. Don't get me wrong. I just, you know, all the crowd noise and stuff, I'm not a big fan of that. This also came in a deluxe version that included a DVD. If you bought it, I bought mine online, so I didn't get the DVD, but the DVD, if you bought the CD, has behind-the-scenes stuff on the Sparkle Lounge tour with live performances of some of the songs, and the music videos for Come On, Come On and Nine Lives, both of which are great. Now, this was the first of 3, count them, 3 live albums in a row. What the actual F? Viva Hysteria came out in October 2013. I do not own it. I have listened to it on Spotify. This was from their Vegas residency, which, I mean, when you think about that, nowadays, it's perfectly normal for rock bands and pop acts to do Vegas residencies. When I was growing up, Vegas residents were Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Richard Pryor, Frank Sinatra. Def Leppard did a residency. Well, so did Backstreet Boys. I mean, really. The album is recorded in 2 parts. It's recorded the first album under their own name, the second album under the band they were pretending to be during their part of their residency tour, a band called Dead Flatbird. Now, I don't get it either. Maybe that big book I just ordered will explain some of that crap to me. And I haven't seen the liner notes. Maybe it was explained in there. But this is a good album, and they actually went all the way back and did Rock Brigade and Hello America, Good Morning Freedom, which was the Hello America B-side, on this album. I don't think they've ever appeared on a live album before, and they never did those in concert when I saw them. I'll talk about that a little bit later. these were great songs all the way around, and they're well done. It's a fun version of The Residency. So, why? Editing TC here. Sorry, I am an idiot. I completely missed an album when I was originally recording this show, which is why the show is up late. So let me go back and do that now. You'll hear some comments later on about how there was like no studio album for years. That's not true. 2015's Def Leppard, the only self-titled album in their career, didn't produce any big hits, but it did have some great stuff and some of the best reviews of their entire run. Let's Go, Dangerous, Man Enough, We Belong, Invincible, Sea of Love, Energized, All Time High, Battle of My Own, Broken Hearted, Forever Young, Last Dance, Wings of an Angel, and Blind Faith. This album was pretty good, and it was definitely needed. Some original stuff after the covers of Yeah and the great music from Sounds of the Sparkle Lounge. But obviously it means, despite my comments on the earlier recording, that they didn't do 3 live albums in a row. There were 2, and then there was this album, and then there was the 3rd one. So forgive that as you're going through. It was just a botch on my part. This album is great too, and if you haven't heard it, I definitely urge you to check it out. And now, back to the show. Why did the 3rd album in this trilogy, 2017's And There Will Be a Next Time, live from Detroit, go back a ways? Now, Joe said they hadn't done a live album since Mirrorball, which was 10 years earlier at that point, almost. 5 years earlier. And that they hadn't really done a live video, which this was also filmed for, since the Slang Tour. So, this was new. This, again, is the first live album to have some of the later stuff on it. But it's not really that much different from Mirrorball and Viva Hysteria. There's a couple of different songs, and the performances are a little different maybe on some of them, but there's no real difference. One live album is all they needed, and they should have stuck with Mirrorball. The other 2 were good. I don't consider them necessities, and that's why I don't own either one of them. I don't own The Lost Session either. The Lost Session was recorded in 2008, but it wasn't released until 2018 because of all the gobbledygook with Polygram / Universal. They re-recorded Let It Go, Rock On, Foolin', Promises, When Love and Hate Collide, and Bring It On the Heartbreak for this session, which was done for iTunes. And I have not heard it. I'm not going to claim to have heard it. Joe thinks their version of When Love and Hate Collide on that collection is a way better version than they've ever done. So I'm definitely going to track it down eventually because I love that song. But I wish I'd known about it earlier. I would have downloaded it from iTunes. I didn't really know about it until recently, like the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks when I was getting ready for this. And I didn't have the time. I have no patience for iTunes. iTunes drives me crazy. I usually get my digital stuff from eMusic or Amazon whenever I possibly can. I will do iTunes if I have to. Excuse me, Apple Music if I have to. I can't comment on it, though, but it is out there. And then the next album was another greatest hits album. The Story So Far, The Best of Def Leppard, 2018. Again, this had the stuff from the later albums. It's the first album, greatest hits album to include stuff from Sparkle Lounge and Yeah. But they just did one in 2005. And it doesn't include Miss You in a Heartbeat, which doesn't make any sense to me. It does have their version of Personal Jesus, which was taken from the Spotify singles show they did in 2018. And Joe is really good at doing that song. And it just seems like, though, that I don't know if they were just kind of bored or if they were just touring or what, but we didn't really need a 3rd damn greatest hits album inside the span of 12 years. Do an anthology at some point, But I mean, I don't know. And anyway, no, it's the basic stuff, except for a couple of, they've substituted a couple of different versions, and they've Personal Jesus is on it, and there's No Miss You in a Heartbeat, which is a travesty. So I won't go any further with that. Now, let me get into the vinyl. I pulled Pyromania. I actually need to look at the camera. Pyromania and Hysteria, which I've had. And I can't find my copy of On Through the Night. It might be one of the ones I lost. I had it on vinyl. This is the brand new album, Diamond Star Halos. This came out earlier this year in May. And I have this only on vinyl. I did not buy the download of the CD. I should buy the download because there's additional stuff with it. It's a great album, and it got great reviews from the critics. And it has some terrific. I mean, look at. I gotta be able to look at the camera again. Look at this imagery. I mean, is that not insane? And the great picture of the band as they appear now on the back, and some great. No, this is the. They don't have that. It's lyric sleeves. They have the pictures on. They have the more artwork on the gatefold also. This is a top-notch album, and take what you want, kick, fire it up, this guitar, SOS Emergency, Liquid Dust, You Rock Me, You, letter U, ROKMI. Goodbye for good this time, all we need, open your eyes, give me a kiss that rocks, angels can't help you now, lifeless, unbreakable, and from here to eternity. Love this album. It's great. It's my favorite album from them probably since Slang, although I love Yeah too, so I don't know if that's going to be true or not. But it's definitely a favorite. I really like it, and it sounds good. It was the first studio album they've done since Sparkle Lounge, I think, in because everything else was a Down Live album or Greatest Hits album. Sparkle Lounge, no, 2008. No, they did, yeah, that was the last studio album. So it was the first album they'd released, period, since 2018. And it's a great album from beginning to end. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. You can listen to it on downloads. Or online if you want to, if you haven't purchased it already. And that's the collection of their studio and live and stuff. Now, two other things have come into my collection in the last couple of years, and well, three actually. And they were both Record Store Day releases. When the Walls Come Tumbling Down, New Theatre, Oxford, 1980. This was right after the release of On Through the Night. It is an interesting recording. It includes Get Your Rocks Off, Hello America, Wasted, let's see, Right Into the Sun, When the Walls Came Tumbling Down, It Could Be You, Rock Brigade, Sad Light, Medicine Man, Answer to the Master, When the Rain Falls, Sorrow is a Woman, Good Morning Freedom, It Don't Matter, Overture, and Lady Strange. This is the only live album with Pete Willis on it. And for me, not liking live stuff, I actually liked this quite a bit. The other one is the performance they did at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they were inducted in 2018, right? 2019. Also a Record Store Day release. It's only got Hysteria, Rock of Ages, photographs, Pour Some Sugar on Me, and their cover of All the Young Dudes from Mott the Hoople. And it's a lot of fun. And if you saw it, you can see the performance online easily. Now, they've come out with a ton, as my friend Don would say, a butt-ton of special editions over the years. Several of the albums have been released over the years. And box sets. Now, they keep changing the formats of the box sets. I only bought one of them. I'd like to get the rest of them. I can't afford them. I mean, they're $300-400 each. But I bought this when it was first issued, and I grabbed it. I love it because it comes complete with ringwear. Def Leppard, the early years. This includes a great book, little book, with pictures and information about the Pete Willis years of the band. This is when this is from. This picture is so great. Look how young they were. 1980. That's Sav, Pete Willis. No, that's, yeah. I think that's Sav on the end, isn't it? Yeah, that's Sav, Pete Willis, Steve Clark, Joe Elliot, and Rick Allen. And it's a great little book. I mean, the book I just ordered is going to be way bigger. And it comes with CDs of the first two albums, On Through the Night and High and Dry. And it has 3 extras. It has the CD version of the Record Store Day concert album, When the Loves Come Tumbling Down. And it also has a Too Many Jitterbugs, which is rarities, live versions, early versions, and stuff like that. And also BBC television and radio recordings called Def Leppard Raw early BBC recordings. I will be honest, those last 2 I have not listened to. I just don't have the time to do them on the computer, and my CD player is still not hooked up yet. So when I get it hooked up, they will be among the first to be listened to. Now, the rest of the sets I would love to get. The Universal re-release box sets are terrific. I mean, they just released Adrenalize on vinyl. I should pick that up because I do love that album so much. And as I said, it is my favorite album by them. There is something magical about seeing Def Leppard in concert also. I saw them twice during the Adrenalize tour. Once at Nutter Center in Dayton, Ohio, and once at Cooper Stadium with Ugly Kid Joe as their opening act. At the Nutter Center was in the round. It didn't have an opening act. They were stupendous. I liked the Nutter Center show better because we had great seats. We were about halfway up and the stage was below us, and it was really, really awesome. Cooper Stadium, we were seated kind of to the left of the stage, so we could see the band, but I couldn't see Rick Allen at all. He was back behind. And the cops at the show were overzealous. And I mean, at one point, the Joe got on the mic and said, "Jesus Christ, dude, they're just fucking dancing, man." Because the cops were hassling these kids that were dancing. I mean, it was ridiculous. Sorry for the language. I try to keep these PG-13. Whitfield Crane, was that his name? The lead singer of Ugly Kid Joe got arrested backstage for shoving a cop. Spent the night in jail in Columbus. But the both shows were stupendous. The best thing about it, Kim saw them a few weeks before I did when she up here. She went to the Centrum in Worcester. This was before I moved up here. And the thing I liked the best about the Nutter Center show was they had a little segment about 2/3 of the way through the show where they wanted to do some current hits by other bands. Def Leppard has always been great at covering stuff. So they started doing a medley, and the medley included Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana and Enter Sandman by Metallica. Only when Joe and the band stopped singing Enter Sandman, the audience didn't. It was so funny. It kept going for 2 minutes, and Joe standing there. I can wait till you finish, you know. Yeah, it was hilarious, and they really know how to put on a show. I've never enjoyed a concert, I don't think, ever that much, except maybe possibly a couple more that we've seen together. But on the ones that I've been to when Kim and I weren't together and weren't seeing them, yeah, that show at Nutter Center is one of the best. enjoyed seeing them so much live. Haven't been to see them since, unfortunately. They usually play either Fenway or what do they call it now? Comcast Center, Xfinity Center, south of town, on their tours. They were at Fenway last summer, but we haven't done anything during the pandemic. We just don't feel comfortable, and it's I would love to see them again. They just put on one of the best live shows ever. Let's talk a little bit about the B-sides for a minute too. They always were putting original stuff on the B-sides. I think the best known of the B-sides is probably Me and My Wine, because it had a video. It aired quite frequently on MTV. It was the flip side of either Photograph or Rock of Ages. I don't remember which one. And it's a great song. But there is one song out there, and Kim is going to kill me for bringing this up. One of the originals that is just so damn funny, you can't help but enjoy it. It is their version of the classic Engelbert Humperdinck song, Release Me, which is billed to Stumpus Maximus and the Good Old Boys. It is on the flip side of, I want to say Armageddon. It's one of the songs from Hysteria. And the lead vocal is done by their longtime roadie, who's since passed on, Malvin Mortimer. They are all drunk off their ass, and it is hilarious. The first time I ever read about it, I have a couple books on Def Leppard. I read about it in the book, and I went and found the single when I was visiting Kim the first year I was up here, before we fell for each other. And we played that thing, and it's hysterical. And my mother just died laughing when she heard it. It's that funny. Because Malvin can't sing. He has this enormous belch near the end of the song. It's a riot. And it shows that Def Leppard is just like everyone else. They're fans. They like to have fun listening and playing music. And that song is the perfect example. There's going to be more. They're still on tour for Diamond Star Halos. There's going to be other things, the deluxe versions, as I eventually bring them into my life. These guys were the first real rock band I ever got into, and I still adore their music. It's not quite universal. There are some songs that I think are weaker than others, but they've never really done a bad song. And I really enjoy watching them. I have the video collections, Historia, I have In Your On In Your Face. I have Video Rewind, I think it was called, when Slang came out. There's 4 of them I have. And I love watching those too. They're terrific. I wish Hanson would do that many videos. They're terrific artists. And that goes for the current lineup, as well as the late Steve Clark, as well as Pete Willis. Every member contributed to the band they were in at the time. And now, of course, Def Leppard has, since 1993, been the current lineup for 30 years now. Joe Elliot, Rick Savage, Phil Collen, Rick Allen, and Vivian Campbell. They do terrific music together. And I just spent $300 on a monster 700 and some page book that will be coming out in May about them. I have never spent that much money ever on something like that. But it just seemed too good to pass up because they were involved, they chose it, they wrote it. It just seems like the perfect bookend for my love for the band. I will go over my favorite songs by them on Rank this week, I think. Maybe next week. We'll see. Because I may have to split it up into singles and album tracks like I did with Carpenters. It's hard. But they will always be an icon of 80s rock and roll. That's not going to change, even though they've aged 40 years since then. They were in their early 20s. Now they're in their early 60s for the most part, and are still making incredible music together. And I hope it stays that way for a long time. If you haven't seen them, they have a lot of online stuff at defleppard.com. They have this thing they call the Vault where you go in and get stuff. They have original merchandise. They put out original tracks on there. They do all kinds of great stuff. If you've never visited their website, you should. There's a lot of great stuff out there. I will always love them. I will always think they were my big rock education. When I first started having leanings away from the pop and the disco that I loved, they were the ones that I latched onto. And now I know that they latched onto some of the music I loved when I was a kid. Like one of Joe Elliot's favorite songs was Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. It was inspiration to him. And it should have been. It was out there for the Osmonds at the time it came out. The singles are fantastic and all the B-sides are fantastic. And one day, maybe, they'll put together just one big collection of B-sides and rarities and not strew them out through all these special CD editions and special store editions and all that shit. And I'm so tired of hearing live albums and greatest hits albums from them. Not that they're bad. They're not bad. They just aren't. They're redundant. Guys, if you ever see this, I love you. I always will. I love seeing you in concert, and I will get back to see you again at least one more time. And know that I will always be a fan. Always. You were my rock education, and I thank you for that forever. If you haven't subscribed to my shows yet, please do. And if you have, thank you. I appreciate it. I have all kinds of stuff on this channel every now and then. Influencers, Tuesdays at 4. Rank This, Thursdays at 4. The Kirkham Report, Saturdays at 4. The Radio Retro Countdown, Sundays at 4. Finding Your Music Mojo, bi-weekly on Mondays, rotating between TKR Video Central and Two Hip Chicks, 6 p.m. for that show. And, of course, TC's Obscuria Vaults, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I have some new stuff coming up in the new year. And as I said at the beginning, this is the season finale of Influencers. I wanted to actually end with these guys because I knew it was going to be long and long-winded and me bitching about things. I will start a brand new season of Influencers in January with a whole slew of other artists that have been a big part of my life and have inspired something and made me who I am today, because that's what this show is all about. For Influencers, I'm T.C. Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Thanks for watching. Ciao, baby.